Hello, my name is Oscar Fire, and guess what? I have finished this. Finally, after a year and a half, I am covering up the title. There we go. Yes, I have finished The Genesis of Shannara, Armageddon's Children. And we're not going to talk about why it took me so long to do it. We kind of have to know why. But I finally gotten to it. And I have things to say. We're gonna get this right. We're gonna get this out of the way right now. I like the book. Okay? I am about to be hypercritical of this thing. But I like the book. I like the narrative. I like the characters for the most part. I like the setup. And I kind of like the pacing. The book it's a slow book, but that's fine. I don't have anything wrong with a slow story as long as things are happening and as long as, you're learning things. Learning things about the world and the setup and everything is fine. The problem is the world and the setup. And yeah, I'm about to talk about that in my usual vaguely unhinged, rambly kind of way. Because here's the thing. Okay, actually, I'm not going to talk about that part first. I'm actually going to talk about this part first. In that something I wouldn't have really noticed back in like 2008, 2009 when I read it originally is how surprisingly overt Terry Brooks is in his sort of politicking. Like, you can tell this was written by a liberal-leaning writer in the mid-2000s based on the way he writes about certain topics. Like, I thought, legitimately, I thought the only way it was like this was naming the dog Cheney after Dick Cheney, which very obviously dates the book really hard, because, of course, Dick Cheney was nobody before the Bush 2 administration, and has been nobody since the Bush 2 administration. No one cares about Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney is not important. But it's like, oh, Dick Cheney was responsible for World War III, or, implied, that Dick Cheney is, partially responsible alongside of so many other politicians for the start of World War III. And it's like, no, Dick Cheney is not responsible for this at all. If World War III is going to happen, well, we can see the actors on the stage right now, whatever you might think of any of them. Okay? But Dick Cheney is absolutely not an individual that had anything to do with it, and the fact that Terry Brooks decided to, shoot his shot on that was such a terrible, stupid idea. And then there's the environmental messaging, right? The environmental messaging, where the sheer number of times he talks about the poisoning of the land and the water and the air makes me want to strangle him. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? Uh-oh. Anyway, it drives me insane because the way he keeps harping on about it drives me up the wall. It's like, I think about the midpoint of the book when we finally get the first of the 2 chapters set in Armageddon, and it's just mentioned again, and I'm finally just like, yes, Terry, we get it. Humans poison the land, humans bad, humans evil, humans dumb. We get it. Stop saying it, or at very least get a thesaurus and come up with a different word than poison. It drove me insane because he never uses a different word other than poison to refer to, whatever chemicals ended up in the water and whatever chemicals ended up in the land and whatever ends up in the air. He just always says poisoning and the poisonings and the poison and the poisonings. And it's like, use different words at the very least and stop bringing it up. The reader gets it. We get it. We understand that at the very least you think that humans are destroying the environment. Again, I don't care which way you swing on this. I tend to kind of lean more in the middle, where I'm like, yes, we should be polluting less, but no, I don't think we are utterly destroying the Earth's environment in the way that some people make us think. But that's not the point. The point is that you're writing a novel, Terry Brooks. Please stop preaching at us. And then in the third place, and this is going to kind of bleed over into the other problem I have with the book. And I know this is gonna be me talking about how many things I don't like in the Genesis of Shannara Armageddon's children. Okay, I understand that this is gonna come across as really negative, but the thing is that this stuff was in the back of my head the whole time, and it was really frustrating reading it because it's not subtle when you know what you're looking at, when you know what you're reading, and it's very frustrating because it's kind of like it makes the book less accessible to people who might disagree with the perspectives in play, and it also just comes across as kind of clumsy and kind of lazy. And it's funny because I talked about when we talk about Defenders and Fall of Shannara, I talked about how Terry Brooks's writing had gotten a lot more clumsy and a lot more lazy, and I'm gonna end rereading those, and I'm really dreading it, especially Defenders. I do not want to reread that one. I'm going to, because I'm dedicated to this. I'm dedicated to this plan of rereading the entirety of the Shannara saga and seeing how much I like and don't like. And I'm actually surprised at how much I didn't like here in this book here. But I'm seeing the inklings, though, of the things that would bother me about literally everything that Terry Brooks would write after this. Whether it's Legends of Shannara, Dark Legacy, Defenders, or Fall. All the problems are already actually here, and that's actually a little surprising. It's not as bad, though. It's not as bad because the characters are still good. The storytelling overall is still good. Broadly speaking, the world building is pretty good, but I feel like that's more like it's more like in the setting the scene sense of world building than in the sense of the broader picture kind of world building. Which, as I pointed out in like the Voyage of the Journal Shannara and so forth, Terry Brooks is not very good at broad umbrella world building either. And it's very obvious here. It's like really obvious here. So let me talk about that third point. And the third point I'm making is that Terry Brooks, it feels like, is making an allegory for illegal immigration. Now, once again, I'm going to point out, yes, I'm very conservative. Yes, I don't like illegal immigration. But I don't care what the personal opinion is here. What I don't like is the sort of the bluntness and the clumsiness of it. And that close to the end of the book, what is it? Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. I didn't mark it. But it's after Logan Tom arrives in Seattle. And I'm almost there. Let's see. Nope, not that. It's the next page, right? Nope, not the next page. Page after that. Ah, yes. Okay. I'm going to read this paragraph, and this is the first time I think I've quoted anything doing these reviews, because I generally don't mark things. Because I'm not really taking this as like an academic study. That's not the point. The point is just my general thoughts and reactions. But, alright. Referring to Logan Tom, he got a block away before he stopped to throw the bones, unable to wait any longer to make certain there was still a reason to go on. But the bones formed up on the square of black cloth, pointing down the street, and toward the sports complex that he already knew was serving as shelter for the compound members. He had seen it from the highway coming in and recognized it for what it was. Another futile attempt by a dying civilization at staying alive, another false hope that protection from the world could be found by hiding behind walls. And that phrase, and I read that just this afternoon, because I really chewed through the last few chapters of the book today. And the whole, you can protect yourself from the world from hiding behind walls, sounds very much like the kinds of arguments I've heard over the years regarding, illegal immigration and, and how conservatives and whoever else are so fearful of foreigners and, and they want to build a border wall because they want to shut the outside world out and all this stuff. And realistically, I'm not even bothered by that. I'm not bothered by that per se, I mean, once again, reiterating my point, I am very conservative on that point. But what bothers me is the fact that it feels like bizarrely first of all, it is bizarrely meta commentary on the part of Logan Tom, as regards the as regards like the safety of living inside a compound. It's very bizarrely meta commentary because it doesn't fit in with the nature of the world that Logan Tom lives in. The simple fact of the matter is, the civilization as we know it has been destroyed in the world of the Genesis of Shannara, right? The United States is gone, Canada's gone, France is gone, China's gone, all the countries are gone, right? It's all fallen apart. There are now mutants running around, there are mutated creatures and all that running around. All the land and all the environment's been poisoned, to use Terry Brooks's favorite word. And everything is basically everything's in a state of collapse. And you need protection from that sort of thing. Guess what's going to protect people from that sort of thing? Walls. Walls. And defenses. And barriers. Okay, you're not going to be protected from those things by living out in the open. As we can see from the dangers that, that the tribes like the Ghosts, Hawk's group face. And all that. It's like they're not safe out there in the open. They can keep themselves safe by protecting themselves with walls, ironically. But, it's like, it's... The contradiction in that writing irritates me to no end. Because Terry Brooks didn't think about it. He was just thinking, again, in terms of mid-2000s immigration debate in the United States. And he wasn't thinking of... And that's how it feels to me anyway. I'm not going to assume... But it feels very strongly like that. Just because I've been paying attention to this stuff for so long. And I wouldn't... And when I read this, 15, 16 years ago, I wouldn't have had the necessary sort of experience to articulate this properly. But I do now. I'm aware now. And it came across really obviously how he phrased that. And it does that several other times earlier in the book too. And it's just very aggravating. But it's aggravating because of the world building more so than because he has an opinion that disagrees with mine. But here's the thing, and this is the other thing, is that he keeps beating the drum of compounds bad, shutting yourself away from the world bad, boom, boom, boom. And he keeps saying it over and over and over again. But here's the thing. The compounds are necessary to help keep people safe and to try and keep supplies going. Right? Like, the simple fact of the matter is, people have to band together in order to keep themselves alive. If they're all separated, especially in a world where resource production has been completely obliterated and the ability to grow new food has been severely weakened, and I'm about to get into a point on that one, then, yeah, people need to band together so they can defend each other and they can shelter and they can survive. Now, I don't know if the world would look exactly like the way it does in this book 30 years on from, the nuclear war and all the chemical warfare and everything that got triggered by it. I'm not exactly sure that the world would look exactly like this, but I can at least suspend disbelief to believe that. My problem is, realistically, that Terry Brooks, first of all, clearly did not consider the logistics of people surviving on long-term rations and rechargeable solar cells and, water purification tablets. It's like, no, even with, the majority of the world's population dead, and let's assume that the world's population is like 8 billion or something in 2050 when World War III occurs, which I think is... If my mental timetable is correct, I think roughly that's when World War III occurred, sometime in the 2050s, and this is now set in the 2080s. I think that makes sense based on how I have gauged Nest Freemark's death, because we're given a specific date for when Nest Freemark died, and we know when Word in the Void was set, which was back in the 90s and what 2000. What was it, 2010? 2008? Something like that? 2007, maybe? We kind of have specific dates, and we can kind of extrapolate from there. World War III occurs in 2050, around then, and then this is set in about 2080. But I am very dubious on the idea, based on the implication by Terry Brooks, that there are like scores of compounds dotted all over the world, that the world's supplies would hold out for that long without creating some sort of way to start manufacturing new supplies, and I mean things like tools and so forth, and also to start growing new food. Because at one point in the book, about the halfway point, Terry Brooks says that, like he says that basically that they never, that with the soil as badly corrupted as it is, oh, there's a good word, but with the soil as corrupted as it is, that that growing new food has been extremely difficult, and most people have not been able to do that. Well, it's like, I'm then wondering, well, why has not everyone starved in the past 30 years then? If no one's able to, like, grow plants properly. That seems a little bizarre, because there's no way that because first of all, canned goods spoil over, after a while. You're just going to be eating rotten paste after a point. Like after, like some canned goods will last almost forever, but those are very rare, and it's not everything. Most canned goods are eventually going to start spoiling, even sealed properly. You're going to start running out, like things like solar charged batteries and everything. That's not going to last 30 freaking years. It's gonna, they're gonna start breaking down. You're going to start having mechanical problems. They're going to start breaking down. They're going to start falling apart. They're going to be lost from the ravages of time. Even if you don't use them at all, are you really going to tell me that a 30-year-old solar battery is going to continue working after, 30 years later? I'm very dubious on that. And I don't think Terry Brooks knows anything about how this sort of thing works. I don't think he realizes how quickly that, even if there's, say, like, let's just say, ballpark it, there's like 50 million survivors worldwide at the end of it all, right? And most of them are all holed up in compounds, but you got your tribes and everything. That's still a lot of people consuming resources, and a lot of them are going to die, a lot of them are going to starve, a lot of them are going to get sick, a lot of that's going to happen. But you're still going to have lots of people consuming resources. And the idea that, say like the medicine, Planetin, right? That like the idea that medicine is going to maintain the same potency over 30 years, and assuming that, that enough of it's going to stay refrigerated, that it doesn't decay immediately. It's not thought through. And the not thinking through really got me, because while I can enjoy the story, my immersion isn't totally there. Because here's the other thing of the not thinking through. And this has been bothering me since the very beginning of the book. And that is the demon invasion, right? Findogask and other demons across the world are leading armies, destroying the last vestiges of humanity, enslaving them, and so forth, and experimenting on the children to make more demons and all that. And it's all horrifying stuff. But, the problem is that Terry Brooks seems to run under the assumption that every single compound everywhere is too afraid to do anything about it. And that right there is the dumbest friggin' thing I think I have ever heard in my life. It is clear that Terry Brooks has never read any books on anthropology. He has never read any books on history, on nation building, on civilization, on why people create civilization. He's clearly never read anything on any of this stuff. And bear in mind, I'm not any sort of expert on this either. My broad understanding of a lot of the stuff is very amateurish at best. It's very loose. It's, there's not a lot there. But I still know enough about, about things like the rise and fall of, like, England and the Roman Empire and stuff like that, that I understand how kind of sort of why people end up banding together. And to Terry Brooks, for some stupid reason, this man thinks that when a massive army is invading, that everyone's just going to kind of sit by and kind of just go, oh, wow, it's really unfortunate that compound over there is getting invaded. Well, we better just sit behind our walls. We'll be safe there, even though they're getting completely overrun. Like, no. No, Terry, that's not how that's going to work. That's not how anything works. Okay? First of all, rumors of this demon invasion have definitely trickled over to West Coast because everyone's kind of vaguely aware of it, right? But then there's just this whole matter of the idea that like the compounds are so insular and so closed off, and this is why I noticed it as a political statement more so than more than as realistic human behavior, is because people are behaving so unrealistically in response to the demon invasion. And that drives me insane. Because let's just take the we'll take the Los Angeles invasion as a microcosm, right? Let's say everyone acts the way Terry Brooks says they're going to act, and they're all just like, oh, we're just gonna huddle up in our Anaheim compound. Oh, we're so scared. Because I think Terry Brooks, I'm not sure if he's explicit about it, but I think he says something like along the ballpark of like, there's like 8 or so compounds in like Los Angeles, and they've all fallen. Like when he first introduces Angel Perez, you know, the other Knight of the Word besides Logan Tom. And he mentions that like there was a bunch of others. I think it was like 8 or something. Like there's 8 total compounds in Los Angeles, and the last one is in Anaheim. And let's just assume for a second that no one in the compounds, every one of the compounds thinks like Terry Brooks thinks they think, right? That they're really insular, they're really scared, they don't want to go beyond their walls. And, maybe they hear rumors of the approaching army, but they're not doing anything about it. I will tell you right now, the first compound that gets besieged and destroyed, they're not just all going to sit back and let themselves be destroyed. They're not going to think, that compound's defenses fell apart. We should be fine. No, they're not going to think that. What they're going to think is, holy shit, that compound's defenses fell. We need to do something about it. And they're going to be proactive about it. They're not going to ignore Angel's warnings about what's about to happen to them. They're not going to not have contingency plans. What's going to happen is the other 7 compounds in the Los Angeles area are going to form an alliance, start sharing resources. Like, holy shit, there is like 300,000 freaks, once men, standing out there, getting ready to beat down our walls. We're going to form an alliance. We're going to start sharing our guns, our ammunition, our vehicles, and we're going to defend ourselves to within an inch of our lives. We're going to do everything to protect our people instead of just sitting around waiting to die. Because that's what they did. They just sat around waiting to die, and Terry Brooks thinks this is how humans think. No, they're not. When faced with insurmountable threats, and certainly there are going to be people who are going to do the dumbest possible thing. We see this all the time in real life, right? There are plenty of people who do the dumbest possible thing. But most people are going to be smart, or at the very least, they're going to do something proactive, and they're going to try and do something to solve the problem. They're not just going to sit around and wait to die. And that's the dumbest part. Is that, no, what's going to happen is that the other 7 compounds of Los Angeles are going to form an alliance. They're going to band together. They are going to start engaging in guerrilla warfare. They're going to form defensive lines. They're going to build trenches. They're going to build earthworks. They are going to do everything in their power to protect their friends and their families and their allies, because that's the only hope they have to not get obliterated by Findo Gask's army. That's the only thing that's going to happen. They're not going to just sit around and wait to die. And, let's say, first compound falls and everyone's like, our defenses should hold. Second compound falls. Holy shit, we gotta band together. We gotta have evacuation plans. We gotta have a defensive army. We gotta have we gotta be ready to protect ourselves. That's what's gonna happen. They're not just gonna sit around and do nothing about it. And you're not gonna tell me that a massive army just marched from the East Coast all the way across the country to the West Coast and no one did anything about it. Like, at least that's what I think it is. It could be multiple armies, but I got the sense that Findo Gask's army has been marching from the East Coast this whole time. But you're not going to tell me that people aren't going to be banding together and trying to protect themselves. Because I will tell you right bloody now that, Findo Gask goes to Texas. If you're going to tell me that Texas still doesn't have some of its old Texas character, even in the post-apocalyptic setting, you're smoking crack, okay? Texas is still going to be Texas, and there's still going to be more guns than people in Texas, and they're going to do everything in their power to help people, and they're going to do everything in their power to defeat Findogask. And maybe they'll lose, but Findogask is going to know that he just faced off against Texas. And that's to say nothing of any other region in the United States, which may potentially, that may potentially, band together. And that's the crazy thing. It's like Terry Brooks thinks that, I don't know, he thinks that, everyone's going to be greedy and they're going to be selfish and they're not going to help their neighbor. And certainly people are going to be a lot more circumspect in the post-apocalypse because resources are limited and they're going to be scared and they're going to be worried. But that state of thinking is not going to last forever. Okay? People can't stay in a state of fear and in a state of crisis forever. Eventually, they're going to want to break out of it. And anyone who's inclined towards kindness and towards mercy and towards generosity are going to be there. And, there's going to be clashes. There's going to be lots of ideological clashes between people who are more of an authoritarian, there we go, bent, and people who are not, and people who are of a, who are greedy and selfish and psychopaths, and the people who are selfless and kind and generous, And in fact, that would probably be a big part of the conflicts in the immediate aftermath of, nuking of the world. But the thing is that's fine. In fact, if Terry Brooks had thought of these things, he might have written a much better backdrop for his story, Because, and this is the other thing, and this is something that kind of really did irk me, is I feel like Terry Brooks did not, I always say his name out fully, I never figured out why, but I always do that. I never say Terry or never say Brooks. I always say Terry Brooks, I guess because it's an easy name to say in full. But the other thing that really irked me is that Terry Brooks seems to think that everyone in the post-apocalypse would become selfish and mean and cruel and, that there would be none of the previous character of the old world. And that strikes me as absurd. Because if all these compounds really do exist, and a lot of these compounds probably existed, dating back 25, 30 years, they would try to preserve some of the old world. They wouldn't just be trying to, protect themselves in an industrial fashion. They'd be trying to preserve things like law and things like philosophy and things like, and other things like learning, botany, whatever else you can think of. Because you're going to have people who are going to be, you're still going to have people, even in a desperate survival world, who will still be interested in pretty rocks, i.e. geology. You'll still have people who are interested in animals and animal husbandry. Speaking of, is that even something that's ever addressed? Do they have cows and chickens still? How are they eating? Again, right at this point. It's like you're still going to have people who are going to be interested in, say, warfare. People who are going to read Sun Tzu's The Art of War. People who are going to read on the exploits of Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte and Dwight D. Eisenhower. They're going to read about these things. You're going to have people who are interested in these things. And here's the thing. A crisis like the invasion of demons is going to start creating great men. Okay? Great men are going to crop up. You're going to have people who are going to become leaders, who are going to become kings, who are going to become great generals. The next Napoleon is going to rise in this crisis, And maybe it'll be a bunch of different little Napoleons, but you're going to have people who are going to be able to try and fix the world. And maybe they'll fail, but they're going to try. And the notion that these people don't exist, that not a single person anywhere in the world isn't going to try and make the world better, even if it's in their own vision rather than, part of some broader moral code like, English common law or the Bible or whatever. They're going to be there. They're going to be there. And you're going to have people who, especially in the United States, a famously Christian country, with a majority Christian population, you're going to have lots of people in the post-apocalypse who are still going to try to be generous. They're still going to be godly. They're still going to try to be Christ-like. They're still going to try to do good things even in the face of the deepest despair. And the notion that people wouldn't do this is honestly almost offensive to me, because there's no nuance in the post-apocalyptic population of Terry Brooks's world. And listen, a certain lack of subtlety and a certain lack of nuance is fine. You don't need you don't need to spell out the philosophy of every single person living in Seattle, okay? You don't have to do that. But you do have to give a sense that, hey, some people want to do good things, some people want to do bad things, some people are in the middle. And there's going to be clashes, but sometimes people are going to do the right thing, sometimes they're going to do the wrong thing, and it's all fine. But the way he portrays it is just so grating, because it doesn't feel like real people. It feels like a caricature of real people. And it really kind of screws up the world building, and a lot more than I originally realized. When I read again, I read this back when I was like 19. Now I'm almost 35, and it's like, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating, and I hate that it's frustrating, because I don't want it to be frustrating. I want to be able to enjoy it, And that's the thing. Going back to the very beginning, I did enjoy it. I do like the book. I like Logan Tom, and I like Angel Perez. I actually like Angel Perez a little more now than I did before. When when she meets the tatterdemalion Ailey, and she and she's traveling with her and so forth. Where is it? When she realizes that she's being pursued by the demon Delarine, and she says, "Hold tight, pequeñita," and I just thought that was adorable. I like Angel Perez speaking, speaking little Spanish words here and there. I think that it's a nice little character. I think it's a nice little element of characterization that you would give the tatterdemalion, that nickname. I pequeñita. I think it's cute. I like it. I enjoy it. I like Hawk, and I like the ghosts. I like how each of them are kind of very unique individuals. Bear, if I recall correctly, Bear kind of gets short shrift, but Panther with his aggressiveness, and with his aggressiveness, but also his loyalty, and Candle, who's very strident and very insistent, but also kind of a scared little girl who sees visions that she can't understand, and Owl being the mother of the group. I like all of that. It's all very enjoyable. And I like Logan Tom, in no small part because he is portrayed especially considering the modern day, he's portrayed in a very unironic fashion. He is very unironically heroic. He is very unironically strong and commanding and a presence. And I love that. I love that, when he goes up to the compound in Seattle, and it's like, he wishes to see Hawk. He doesn't have to use force. It's just the sheer steely determination in his eyes. You can imagine what he looks like, holding this black staff, a knight of the word, who has seen more battles and seen more death and destruction than anyone has ever seen in their life. And, he walks up and sees the leader, the chairman, I think it was, of this compound. And he goes up to him and he's like, "I want to see Hawk. I wish to see the boy. I wish to talk to him." And they're trying to turn him away. And he just waits. And eventually, they just go, "All right, you can see him. It's fine. It's fine. It's cool. You can see him." I like seeing a character. It feels like it's been so long since I've seen a character like that unironically. And it's so frustrating because I think that's a big part of my problem with the Leahs in both the Defenders and the Fall of Shannara, is that they don't feel like strong characters in their own right. They kind of get pushed around, and they don't ever come into like the fullness of kind of being you know, the kind of authoritative figures they ought to be. But I like Logan Tom because he is. And he definitely has his flaws, and I think I'm pretty sure they come to a head in the future. But he definitely has his flaws and his weaknesses, but he's, you know, he's still a good character, and I like that. You know, I very much enjoyed his journey, and I very much enjoy a lot of what happens here. I like the plot beats, I like the plot cadence. I just wish the parts surrounding all of it were a lot better. Because that's what got me. As you can tell, I ranted about that stuff for almost half an hour. And that stuff got me. It frustrated me. You know? Because I feel like I'm hating on the book. Yeah, you know, on a book that I genuinely enjoyed. I genuinely enjoyed it. I can't stress that enough. I genuinely enjoyed the story. I genuinely enjoyed the characters. I hate when world building gets scuffed like that. Because when you mess up the world building, it takes you out of it. And it distracts you. And it makes you go, well, this is not necessarily how people react. There would be a lot more nuance to it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Genesis of Shannara and Armageddon's Children. The upshot is that my coda piece for the trilogy should be a lot shorter because I just expounded on all of that in this one video. But regardless, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment. I especially appreciate comments. I don't feel like I get enough of those. I know I don't always answer them, I'm not always paying attention for them, but when I do appreciate it. I feel like I did forget to answer a comment, in fact. I'll have to go back to that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Until next time, everybody.